August 1912. More arguing. This time the Black Princess and the White Princess, as the Shining Princess put her arms up, as if hating as much as Milo did. The new king seemed to be the problem, but it was too noisy for her, and she had headed back to hers and Ernest's rooms at the generator and climbed the ladder right to the top. It was cool up there, and her heavy dress was less of a burden as she scaled the building with a book of Ernest's. She had to be careful with it. An important man had given it to Ern and he had to do some work with it. Milo traced the dedication with her finger, with regards and thanks, E. Rutherford. Ernest knew her hiding place of old, and carried her down several hours later, for she had dozed off. I found these in her sleeve. More seeds, Ernest mused, folding back up the cotton handkerchief that contained seeds that Milo had collected. Thomas looked at his lover's face. What does she want, em fur? Ernest shrugged, then trod the flagstones and placed the cloth, still folded, next to Milo. I don't know. It's strange. Spoke to Dr. Clarkson about this, about Milo. He said children have strange ideas about things and he would consider it. To come back when Milo's older if there's no change. To forget about it, really? Then, forget about it, Thomas suggested, reaching for Ernest's hand. He's the doctor. You're the there. Atomic physicist? Ernest smiled, and took Thomas's other hand. He sighed, and looked away. Father wants to send her away to our grandmother's. She has 4 other daughters besides my mother, all married. It is just her and my grandfather now. Maybe that's for the best. Thomas came closer to Ernest now, and put his hands to his waist. Will your father tell her? He'll have to go carefully, Ernest admitted. If Milo finds something that doesn't make sense when he explains, or gets the wrong idea about anything he says, she will go stubborn and scream the place down. Thomas's hands slipped down Ernest's waist, meeting his waistband, and he slipped the tips of his fingers into the waistband of his trousers. I know what she's like. Kiss. Patience. Little by little. Kiss. Kiss. You have so much patience with her, Ernest praised, softly. She's not even your sister. No, my sister lives in France with her husband and 4 children, Thomas said, leaning back, to better assess his lover's brow, his eyes, the straightness of his nose, the curl of his lips. She's nothing like Milo. So you see, Mariah is denser than 2 bricks put side by side, but she can paint and draw anything she sees. They met in Manchester and her husband also paints. They sell what they produce, but without him, she would give them away. Barrow shook his head. With your Milo. It would be a boring world if everyone was the same now. Shut up, and give me a kiss. Thomas made to lean in, but Ernest continued talking. I'm fitting the telephone here for a week. We'll be back in Manchester. But his words were imprisoned with Thomas's finger, pressing it to Ernest's lips. I said, shut up. And give me. A kiss. 88,888,888 1913. Listen, Milo, Ernest said, as they returned during Whitsun to expand the telephone network at the Downton estate. You're nearly 10. Stay out of trouble. Help me by laying out the plans. Tell me where the junctions are. He looked up when Milo said nothing, and saw who it was who had stilled her tongue. Lord Grantham. Ernest got to his feet. We are so nearly ready to fit the telephones at Mr. and Mrs. Crawley's home. You wanted one in the servants' hall too? Thank you, Mr. Ashby, Robert Crawley replied. In Carson's office will be sufficient, for now. And not the Dower House? Not yet. But by the hall atrium. He glanced over to the plans. Yes, I can see you have accommodated for one. You see, it's a spare, from yours, here, in your office. Lord Grantham nodded, as he took the blueprints from Ernest's proffered hands. I do see. Now, Lord Grantham handed back the plans to Ernest. Mr. Ashby, we are holding a dinner party this evening, and we would be delighted if you would join us. Evelyn Napier comes up from London, and I believe he has a cousin who works with the Atomic Research Department at Cambridge, though I forget his name, and, he saw Ernest's gaze drift to Milo. She could read her books down in the servants' hall tonight, Lord Grantham suggested. I have seen her poring over something or other. My undergraduate books, Ernest told the Earl, who raised his eyebrows. She is coming on in mathematics and physics, and English and history, from my father's library. She learns quickly. So I have seen, Lord Grantham told Ernest, smiling to Milo, then said to her, you are to go down to the servants' hall tonight, and we'll wait for your brother there. Milo nodded. She had learned that being agreeable when adults spoke caused fewer problems. It amazed her how the old king knew precisely what she would be doing in the future, a whole sequence of events. Ernest escorted her to the stairs, but Milo hesitated. Into the brown bear's lair, she didn't want to. Beyond them, 3 figures appeared, in mud-soaked riding attire. Lord Grantham was speaking to them. One of them was the Black Princess, who seemed very pleased by the big smile on her face. Milo was getting better at understanding how feelings matched to appearances, although it didn't work in every case. For Milo, for instance, many people thought her appearance, or her gesture meant something it really didn't. She was learning how to look like other people. Still afraid of going down there? You're nearly 10, Milo. What had age got to do with it? The Red Book of Fairy Stories contained one tale that spoke of an elderly woman who had been afraid. How did age correlate to fear? If I go, you can't lay out the cable, Milo argued, with flawless logic. So, when you have helped me, you will go downstairs and sit with Mrs. Hughes. He saw the panicked terror on his sister's face. I will explain what his lordship has said, Ernest clarified. She had at least seemed to have forgotten about the fox, running with burning lungs as it must have been to escape the foxes in that morning's hunt. Milo had seen the animal pulled apart, and had not been troubled. More concerning was her question about its death. How can it once have been alive, making decisions, and now it is hound food? How indeed? And it had been Thomas Milo had asked this of, and he had calmed her, taking her shoulders in his hands, and rubbing them gently. He should have been Milo's brother, not him, his lover, Thomas, a clock whisperer, who knew exactly what to say to me Lucina and what to do. 88,888,888. They are not yours? Ernest asked Thomas, when he saw the bottles of wine in the generator room. They are now, Thomas told him, offering him the bottles and showing Ernest the labels. Chateau Lafite, 1908, he told him. The best in the business. But, you will say nothing, just like I will say nothing to you about your sister this evening. What did she do now? Ernest sighed, glancing away. But Thomas smiled. You are proud of her, and rightly so. I saw her fixing the electrical circuits upstairs, and asked her to rewire an old lamp. Perfect, Thomas told him. But Ernest looked away still. I am afraid that the more she can manage like this, the less she will be like a normal person, he sighed, flopping onto the bed. Not, however, relinquishing the Chateau Lafite, a good sign, Thomas considered. No, Ernest persisted. How can she ever grow into a normal person? Father is getting worse. I cannot contemplate an institution, not for Milo, Thomas reassured him. She is teachable. She remembers things. She will just have to be taught social skills. She will remember them, and know how to behave. She might have fewer teary breakdowns. Thomas pulled out 2 glasses and offered Ernest the corkscrew. I suppose you're right, Ernest said to him. You usually are. Thomas poured the wine, and they sat on Ernest's bed, one electrical test lamp on the wall opposite them. Better than candlelight. I saw how you looked at him, Thomas began, working up to a mild argument. It made for much better sex when they were aggravated with each other. Who? The word dripped with faux innocence, and did not fool Thomas in the slightest. The Turk. Kamal Pamuk. Oh yes. Ernest raised an eyebrow. Jealous? A little, Thomas admitted, and grinned. He was too happy. Ernest was too happy to even pretend to fight. What's this white bear, old king business? Thomas asked, at length, with Milo. Oh, that, Ernest murmured. It's what she calls the people here, at the big house as she calls it. Do we all have nicknames, or is it just the family? Not you, Ernest told him. She calls you Thomas, but most of everyone else. Lord Grantham. The old king. The new king is Matthew Crawley. Ernest took a sip of the wine. Undecanted, but drinkable. So the old queen is Mrs. Crawley? No, Ernest murmured. You would think so. The dowager. I don't know what she calls Mrs. Crawley. And Lady Sybil is the shining princess. And he listed all of his Milo's nicknames, those he understood. It shows she understands the hierarchy here, Thomas mused. Very subtly too, assuming the Mr. Crawley title estate debacle has not been explained to her. No one would. Thomas shook his head. He turned to Ernest. So she therefore understands more than people give her credit for. Had it been when Mrs. Hughes remarked how kind he always was to little Milo that he had wondered why? Or had he always known that he had some affinity to her for her strangeness? She understood the world that she found so difficult by turning them into fairy story characters, then changing them when the situation suited. On reflection, Thomas could see where Ernest was coming from. What happened when she grew? What would become of her as a woman? Thomas reached for Ernest's hand. He smiled, and caressed the back of Thomas's with his thumb. They were perfectly safe locked in here, but sometimes all Ernest wanted to do was to fling open the door and shout and scream how much he loved this man. Who does she call the brown bear? Thomas asked, returning the gesture. Bates, Ernest told his lover as he kissed his neck, lips soft as he went down the man's neck. Hates her for some reason. I caught him about to hit her for something. He stopped when I came in. Did he now? Mused Thomas. But she called someone the bear. I thought that was Carson. Yes, agreed Ernest. She's still quite afraid of him. Aren't we all? Thomas replied. And then there was no more talking, just embracing and holding and kissing and loving. And in the morning, two spent and satisfied men pulled themselves apart and got in with their daytime work as if nothing at all in the nighttime hours had transpired at all, which was just as well, because a certain Turkish diplomat had chosen that night to expire in quite the wrong bedroom.